Right now, the only way to properly assess the microbiome inside your uterus is a biopsy. Invasive, painful, and the last thing you want done to tissue you're trying to keep healthy. Ronny Szelinsky's team is building an AI diagnostic tool that infers the state of your endometrial microbiome from a simple vaginal swab. No biopsy, no anesthetic, and accurate enough to be clinically useful for most women. In part 3, we get into how that works, what it could predict, and why fertility clinics in particular stand to benefit enormously. We also look at where this field is genuinely solid versus still speculative, and what he thinks will be routine at your gynaecologist appointment within 10 years that currently doesn't exist at all. Plus, there's a theory about one of the most painful and underdiagnosed conditions in women's health that may change how we understand it from the ground up. This is where the science gets interesting.
Welcome back to Biohacking Eve, Health Optimization for Women with Judith Miller, where we shine a light on everything that will help you reach your best self as a woman, as unique and individual as only you can be. Live long and prosper, my friend.
In part 1 of this conversation with Ronny Szelinsky, founder of Get Happy, we talked about what the gynaecological microbiome is, why lactobacillus dominance is the mark of a healthy vaginal and uterine environment, and how silent dysbiosis can undermine fertility with no symptoms at all. In part 2, we went into the estrogen microbiome feedback loop, the estrobolome, and the science behind Get Happy's oral 6-strain formula, including why a capsule you swallow reaches your reproductive tract just as effectively as vaginal delivery. We ended on something that surprised me. With every natural birth, a woman's microbiome loses diversity in a way that doesn't fully reverse, because specific strains are essentially transferred to the baby during seeding, the bacterial handover that happens in the first seconds of life. Now in part 3, we pick up with what's coming next, the diagnostics, the emerging science, and what Ronny expects to look completely different in 10 years.
You're also looking at AI-based diagnostics to replace biopsies. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So basically what we were, and this is actually not that hard to describe, when we see that the vaginal and the endometrial microbiome is connected, and what I said before, if we just have enough data, and that's the biggest thing, you need huge data sets, like normal for creating AI. So the way how you would see the microbiome, or the only way right now, is to take material out of the endometrium, which would be a biopsy. This is something that is like an invasive way of taking material. It has side effects like bleeding, etc., pain, inflammation, swelling. Can also lead to a really bad inflammation if you are unlucky. There are side effects. That's why, from a science perspective, we see that it would be a good benefit for women to have a solution to see the situation in the endometrium without having this invasive type of getting the material out. And that's where we thought about, okay, if the vaginal and endometrial microbiome is going hand in hand, and the easiest way to get the microbiome from the vaginal tract is just a normal swab. Like, that's just a regular swab test. That's easy, there's no pain. It's fast, easily done. It's not that expensive, quite cheap. And so this would be something that could be done for everyone. And then we started to think about, okay, the whole strain sets that we have and that we saw that were from the endometrium, and the vaginal strain sets that we have from the same person, are we able to detect patterns? And those patterns would be a way of seeing, okay, if you have a specific situation in the vaginal tract, we can conclude on what is the situation in the endometrial tract right now. For sure, this will never be in the next 10, 20 years. It will never be 100% like as a biopsy. A biopsy, like, you have the real material, you will do your NGS sequencing, yes, so, and you will see the whole strains and genetic profiles. But with an AI, you would be able to come quite close to that, which would be enough in the most cases to see, okay, is there something going on right now? Is there like a vaginal pathogen which leads to the fact that, okay, we know that there's also an endometrial pathogen right there, which is affecting your whatever fertility or gynecological or cycle health right now, then we can actually conclude from the vaginal swab and the sequencing and like the strains that are in there and found in there, we can conclude to the situation in the endometrial microbiome. And this is something that is connected to genetic sequences that we would see there. And with the AI, we are trying to be able to connect a specific genetic sequence to other genetic sequences where we see, okay, typically they are going together or they are like signal givers for each other. This is what we are trying to figure out with this AI approach.
What are the things you would want to predict with the AI? So obviously, they've got implementation probability, certain subtypes of dysbiosis, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So what we're trying to solve there, like the main use case is like, or the first use case would be focused on fertility for sure. So it would be a main benefit for every fertility clinic in the world. Yeah. So to see, okay, we can just by a vaginal swab, we will be able to see how the endometrial situation is, because in a lot of cases we would like to see that, but we would have to do a biopsy, which would lead to like a negative impact on the whole reproductive thing that we are doing here right now. For example, if you're doing an IVF, the worst thing you could do is to disrupt the endometrial tissues somehow or to damage it. You don't want to do it at all. That's why clinics would massively benefit from a non-invasive way of measuring and having like a view on the situation in the endometrial microbiome. This is like one thing, but another thing is connected to and this comes after the whole cycle and hormonal situation. If we are able to somehow understand how the hormonal situation and what we were talking about with this microbiome that is connected to the estrogen level, so the estrabol, we also will be able to see, okay, which strains are affecting the situation, and is there a situation in the gynecological and reproductive system that is shown by data and AI without like just by a non-invasive way to see, okay, there is something going on and this has an effect and impact on your hormonal situation right now. So what we should do is bring in a specific set of other bacteria. This is where we would go into a more personalized approach, where we see because the results will be different from person to person, to have a more personalized approach of, okay, now we can know and can bring in a specific set of bacteria that will help you. And then we see also impact on fertility or hormonal situation or cycle situation. When we see that right now, because we have like 10,000 of users right now that are using our product and solution, we have huge numbers of people taking it because of cycle problems, and we see that they benefit from it. They have like less pain, they get irregular period bleeding, like irregular cycles. Even we have a huge number of people with endometriosis that were saying, okay, that the first thing that really helped me, the first thing where I experienced less pain, even gynecologists say, okay, it has like an impact that I can see by doing ultrasound, where we see, okay, this is all good, but it cannot be measured that easy right now. If we would be able to measure it in an easy way, that would be the next big step, what we are working on.
This is actually my next question. So where is the field strong so far? Where is that actually still speculative?
Strong it is in the view of fertility. That's where we know how it's affecting fertility. We know that. We know the situation on the egg cells. We know the situation on sperm. We know why the bad microbiome is affecting fertility in a negative way. So we are sure about that. And then we also know with our research and how we built up the product, we knew, okay, this is a set of strains that is directly affecting the risk factors that are leading to fertility problems and issues. That's where it's strong. Second thing where it is also really strong is the whole real intimate health. When we're talking about, okay, everything that is connected to bad pathogens, that is like scientifically shown factor for getting a bacterial vaginosis or UTI, that's also where we are sure about, okay, this is the right thing, those are the right bacteria. The lactobacillus dominated environment will be helpful for that. It's where science is absolutely clear. Where it's more a bit like where we always are happy to see that, but where there's no big science about it, is everything that is connected to hormones and cycle. This is where we see an impact, and we see the great results of the people that are using it. But we cannot say that we can, I don't know, just show the paper and say, okay, we know why it's working. This is something that is people are using it for, but this is nothing that we are actively promoting, where we are actively saying, okay, this is like a cycle regulator or whatever. Yes, there are like thousands of products out there that are saying, yeah, we have magnesium and whatever and singing it, and we call it cycle regulator. Yeah, it's nice marketing, but we are not actively claiming that from a scientific perspective. The people are just using it because they're understanding it. We're doing a lot of education out there, and the people, they start to understand that it's like an important factor for the gynecological health, and whatever gynecological problem they have, they will take that and start to think about their microbiome. And that's exactly what we want to achieve. But on this whole cycle and hormone thing, there's not that much science out there right now, and especially no final results that is like common knowledge then in science.
If someone used your product for, say, 3 months and they didn't see change after that, what would be the top plausible explanations?
Yeah, they don't see results. So typically we start to experience everything between 1 to 6 months. Yeah, so this like seems to be diverse from person to person. For me, it's absolutely understandable. People have manifested like in parts like really, really manifested bad microbiomes, and those people will need a longer time period to repopulate in a good way, because it's like a war going on in there. Yeah, so the bacteria that are beneficial and helpful, they try to push away the bad bacteria, bad pathogens, and this will take a shorter or longer time period. So typically then we say after 6 months, and this is like the final timeline. If you don't experience anything at all after 6 months, especially if you are using it for specific symptoms, not saying that your microbiome is nothing that you will directly experience. It's nothing like, let's say, what is like an example? Creatine is a good example. Yeah. So typically after taking creatine, you really will experience something. You will feel more energetic and better cognitive function, or more, you can use more weights in the gym or whatever. You really will feel that. The microbiome is something that you will not directly feel. You will not feel that you have Lactobacillus crispatus in there right now. You will not feel that. What you will feel is if you have specific symptoms and they get better. If you don't have any symptoms or something, what should you experience? You won't experience something different. You will experience that it's like a stable state, and you can be sure that it's having a good effect and a good impact on the vaginal and endometrial system for sure. But why should you experience something different than a good situation that you had before without any symptoms? If you don't have symptoms, for example, for like fertility issues, this is not really a symptom, but it is like a situation you have right now. There you will experience, hopefully, the end result of getting pregnant. It is every day. But for not having anything, you will not have the massive upside from it. Why should you? If you would have good magnesium levels, why should you take magnesium? You won't experience a massive upside from it. Yeah. Or if you have good iron levels, you won't benefit from like taking huge iron like supplements or something. So if you don't experience anything at all, if you are in this symptom or problem topic somehow, we wouldn't suggest to take it anymore. Why should you? Because after 6 months, we are sure that after the 6 months, the situation is good and stable. If you want to keep the situation up, take it longer and make it at a new routine, then you are sure that the situation will be kept up over the whole time period. It won't fall down again. This is important to understand. But if you say, okay, it seems to be not the root cause for my problem, because fertility, as an example, it can also have like many different aspects of like, not microbiome is one aspect. Yeah, we are not talking about that. There's no magical solution. If you have problems with producing egg cells, for example, or not producing, but bringing the egg cells into the tissue because you have like a low serve or something, there you have different problems that we cannot affect. Or if you really have like whatever thyroid situation that is affecting your hormonal status, this is something where we don't have an impact on. And that's where we say, okay, after half the year, you can be sure you kept this, you built the situation, the system good in a good way, but you should maybe try to start working on also another factor that will be important for your journey right now. And this is what we're typically communicating.
And if your microbes are talking to you, you probably should go and see a doctor. Speaking
Yes, for sure.
antimicrobial resistance, is that something that's relevant for you? Obviously, if you're taking things long term.
Yes and no. So typically those strains are not that sensitive to it. So maybe try to turn it around. So if you're taking antibiotics all the time, you can be sure that you have a microbiome problem for sure. So the more you take, the more challenging it will get to build up the system and the microbiome in a good way, and it will take longer, or maybe it will even not work at all anymore if you were always tackling and killing the bacteria. There are people that are getting into a situation where they are not able to build up the microbiome in a specific way anymore, where you would say this is healthy and this is the microbiome that has like good diversity and right strain sets. That is why I would suggest to always, whenever you take the antibiotics, also take gynaecological microbiome product, not just lactic acid, also bring in the strains. Because, just giving one example, why are women experience somehow or sometimes while taking antibiotics bleeding? This is like a side effect of antibiotics, where a woman always get really, really sensitive and distracted from it because they say, okay, why do I get like my menstrual bleeding right now? What is happening in my cycle? So what's going on? And this is something where we know that antibiotics have an effect by killing the right bacteria, and killing the right bacteria will lead to the results that also the whole cycle health and the whole status on the tissue and the endometrium and also the ovaries is like reset. And the body seems to be, from like time to time, or in some people, the body seems to get a bit confused and starts to like rebuild the material by pushing it out, and starts with a bleeding. Because they say, okay, the material seems to be dead, we have repopulated, and now we have to wash it out, and now you get a bleeding. This is actually something that is basically healthy, because the body like tries to bring it back into a good state. But basically it's a good reaction, but nothing you want to have, nothing that you should do, because it's like not biological normal, it's synthetic. And this is something where bacteria can help with. If we bring in the right bacteria while taking the antibiotics, so the bacteria will keep the levels up. And we did not experience, it's also part of the science, that we had any resistance there. So there was no strain that was not able to populate because of taking antibiotics, even taking antibiotics over a longer time. There was no strain in the gynecological microbiome that we saw that was like getting problems with repopulating. So that seems to work quite good and quite well. But also, to be honest, there is no science out there that is focused on, for example, taking antibiotics over decades and comparing the population before and after decades. There's no long-term science out there right now.
We don't want to live that long if I take antibiotics for decades, but fair enough.
Absolutely.
So that's the one question I've got. If you had a men's onboarding playbook for female health, what would the first 3 steps be?
Yeah, good question. Onboarding playbook would be, first of all, really mean it. Because I see, especially companies in the, for example, consumer space out there that are focused on female health, or maybe this is maybe they're just having a part of their business is female health, and they're not meaning it at all. There's no really intrinsic drive behind it besides, I don't know, earning money, making it pink. So pink washing stuff, even in the pharma space, we know that like there are drugs on the market that are actually there for 10, 15 years and just done in pink and done €5 more expensive and sold to women. It makes no sense. It's just capitalism in the end. So if you do the topic, think about if you really want the topic or you just want the people as a target group. This is a huge difference. So mean it. When you not mean it, you will not be able to change something that is really beneficial for people. So this is the first thing. The second thing, from my opinion, would be to take your time and really dive deep into the topic, because the female biology is, in a lot of terms, is so totally different. There are aspects that you will not know from common knowledge or what you see on social media. There's so much more going on and so much more science that is super, super interesting. And you have to understand that if you want to be able to speak to the real top people that are really good in the topic and deep in the topic, you have to understand the topic. You can not just start and say, yeah, now we want to do something in female health and blah, 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 and have the common phrases. Really understand and dominate the topic before you start. So that is the second thing. And the third thing, there are like a lot of things I could suggest, but I think the important thing as a man is just do it, but do it in a way that is, somehow more not focused on the emotional thing that much, because you will lose your face if you're starting to talk about, I'm one of you, I can feel you, blah, 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 blah. You will lose your face. The people won't like it. Keep on the fact level as I do it. Do something that is innovative, but keep focused on the facts. Keep focused on things that you can understand, that you can tell and you can stand behind, but don't start with, because I also saw that on whatever social media, for example, there are people that are trying to tell a specific view on them that they feel, so how female biology is working, that bullshit. So these are like three things I think that are important.
Good start. Looking at the future, what do you think will be, from your point of view, what do you think will be clinically normal in 10 years' time that feels really fringe right now?
Clinically normal, okay. Based on the microbiome topic, I think in 10 years, whenever we're talking about gynecological health, the microbiome will be part of it. I think this will be absolutely normal that the basic appointment at your gynecological doctor, the gynecologist will have a view on the microbiome. And that is like absolutely normal, because I know that about 20% of the doctors already know it. So roundabout, that's what we saw. And the rest of the 80% are doctors that are just needing some more time to understand it. This will be like this typical effect of like if you are getting over this tipping point where the really interested people are understanding it, will spread the word into the mass, and then the other doctors will understand it. And this will be, I think, the rest of the maybe then you have 80%, and the rest of the 20% are doctors that are too old and conservative for being open to new topics. They don't want it anymore. They say, I will retire in 5 years. I will not do anything new anymore. I will not do any new treatments or whatever. And in 10 years, they won't be there anymore as practitioners or doctors. So they will be retired and having to rent and everything. So then we will have the new generation of doctors. And this is the good thing. The new generation of doctors, they already heard about the microbiome. So this is something that is not a big part in the studies. If you are doing your studies in medicine, it is not a big part, but it is a part. They heard of it from day one, actually. For people that did studies in 1970s or 80s, microbiome was not existent like at all there. So people don't know that there were bacteria driving the gut health or whatever. And this is a good thing. And I think in 10 years, every female doctor, practitioner, or gynecologist, or also the clinic will have microbiome units that are just like there for treating and repopulating the microbiome in a good way.
Fantastic. Are you ready for the curveball questions?
Yeah,
the
go for it.
Yes. The answer is yes. Good.
Yeah.
So, what are 3 things that you wish that your colleagues and or clients would know that you believe will really move the needle in the field? Or alternatively, if you say you had a gigantic billboard and you could put anything on it anywhere, what would it say and why?
So first of all, because we still have to educate people about it, that there is a microbiome. That's the first thing. First things first, people have to understand that there is a microbiome in their body. Yes, so the majority of the people still don't know that. In Germany, we had this one book called Darm with Charm. This was like a book which was actually the main driver for like a few people like started to understand, okay, there are bacteria, and bacteria is nothing that is bad for your body, and started to think about their gut health connected to bacteria. It is a good thing, but we still need to shout out that there is a microbiome and everyone has to understand it, and not just the normal crowd, also the people in the topic, like doctors. Yeah. So I'm always like frustrated from like talk to gynecologists, they that don't know anything about it. They never heard about it. I don't know why, but they never heard about the microbiome. Yes. And this is the first thing. The second thing is not just telling the people that there's a microbiome, and specifically in the markets that I'm operating in. So when we're talking about the doctors and the science, everyone has to understand that there are different microbiomes and that we are not able to have one scientific angle. We need different bubbles that are like focusing on the specific topics. So that is super, super important, because there are players that are trying to handle like everything, like gut, gynecological, skin, mouth, like everything together. So that don't work out. It's too early. We have to understand the systems per se, a bit like divided from each other. And if we understand every system, then we can start bringing it together. This is important. This like dividing it and understanding that there are like also different microbiomes in the body. And the third thing that I would shout out to the crowd, especially when I'm not talking about the doctors or the business perspective anymore. Good question. I would say the third thing is that we should start to think about how our body works, that our body is not the only living mechanism. So our body is like a temple for other things living inside of us, that we are changing the view on how we live a bit. And we know that living parts in our body will have like impact on our living. Yes. So, and I think it's not a situation that like there's nothing in there. That's totally wrong. There's a lot going on in there. And I think we have to shift the perspective a bit of the people that with what we are doing, we are also impacting other smaller lives, but we're also impacting lives. And maybe with this view, because a life is like something that has a more higher, like much more important. If you tell something about that is living than non-living, if we're changing the perspective a bit on that, I think people will automatically think about their health more and also start to get more emotional connection to what is going on in their body, and they are not alone here.
So, next question. What are 1 to 3 books that you've either given the most as a gift or that have greatly influenced your life, and why?
Good question. So I think for sure for the topic, the book, like what I already said, Down with Charm. So this is like a German book, which is like for understanding the gut microbiome. This is something I would definitely recommend everyone reading that for understanding the microbiome topic per se, diving in a bit and understanding the gut microbiome. It's not talking about other microbiomes, just talking about the gut. Yeah. So then I would say there's another book that I found really interesting, which is a bit more for the people that are, maybe also a bit more nerdy about health. This is called, also German. It's from Dr. Professor Michael Becker. It's called Herzenssache. And this is a book. This doctor, I had a podcast episode also with him in the past. And this was a person that is really innovative, because he's one of the, I think just one of 2 people that are focusing on that a female heart is working different than a male heart. And he wrote a book on that, which is really, really, really interesting, because he is actually has like hundreds of female patients that are coming to him, because the typical cardiovascular medicine was not able to solve their problem, because the typical cardiovascular school medicine is not dividing a human heart into a male and a female heart. It's all generic. It's just one. But this is wrong. That female heart is working different, especially when we're talking about signal giving and neural system impact on the female heart. And he developed a specific method, for example, for people that always have this short, high heart rate shooting up. These are like in 90% of the cases female, and they have like microcirculation problems, which are not known in the school medicine at all, but it is like nearly a female only thing. And this is where he dove into the topic really, really deep. And this is really a really good book that I would recommend when we're talking about female health topics that are really different to men. And the first thing is because you were asking for, okay, what was something that was really interesting or bringing you into a right direction? So one of the first books that I were reading for longevity is called Boundless. I'm sure you also heard about it from Ben. So, and this was a book that is really like a huge one, but there's so much knowledge in there. And this was for me like a first push into thinking about, okay, there are things that are totally new, and there are things you can also change in life that are a bit inconvenient, but it seems to have a great impact. And this was actually something that was pushing a bit out of the comfort zone, thinking about new topics, being more open to new topics. And this was a really good book where I also adapted some insights from into my life that were also having a good impact on me. And this is where a bit my interest for longevity, or one of the first things where my interest for longevity started, which I would absolutely recommend.
I'm a huge fan of Boundless, I have to say. I mean, for me, this is the Bible as far as biohacking is concerned. Obviously, not differentiation for women. It's more, when I say it's general, I mean, it's 700 pages or something long, right? So it is very much textbook. And basically, I keep telling people that the minute you actually want to go deep on the subject matter of biohacking, of health optimization, again, with the caveat, he obviously doesn't differentiate for women very much. So that's sort of why I come in, but that's actually been a huge inspiration for doing this podcast in the first place. And like, you start with Pt3, you get off the couch, you get moving. If you then want to go deep, it's Boundless, Ben Greenfield next, and then if you're a woman, you come to me. So that's the trajectory for those who are not aware yet. So, okay, next question.
Absolutely.
What purchase of £100, dollars, euros or less has most positively impacted your life in the last, say, 2 to 3 years or in recent memory?
This is hard to say. I think the first thing for me, I can say something that was really, really like affecting and impacting, was a bit more expensive, but it was for like a home, what is English word, like a home trainer for like moving at your desk, a walking pad. I think there are walking pads that are not that expensive, but for me as a person that is like, I have to say, like, I'm a longevity person, but from my job perspective, and like, I really have so many things to do, I'm really sitting a lot in front of like some kind of display. And this is the problem. Sitting is the worst thing you could do, actually. It was like sitting all day, it's absolutely shit for your metabolism, for your muscle, for everything. And that's where I started with this walking pad. And this had a great impact because it's also like impact on the cognitive function, I think. This is like had a massive impact. But I think this was a bit more expensive, which was less expensive, under 100, I think even under 50, but had a huge impact on my health is electrolytes. I started like maybe 1.5 years ago. I started like really caring and taking electrolytes because for me, before, electrolytes were something that I had, in my opinion, were something for people that are doing a lot of sports, that you are not running out of your electrolytes when you're sweating a lot and stuff like that. And that's where also the most people thought it's coming from. But electrolytes is something that is so important because we have in the common nutrition, we have so much salt in there. And this is a huge problem, even hidden salt. And this will disrupt. Most people think this is an electrolyte. Yeah, it's a good thing. Why should I take more salt? But this is not the salt we're getting from our food, but like other electrolytes. And those electrolytes, especially if you have a big salt intake, even without knowing it, you need the other electrolytes to keeping it in balance. And as soon as I started that, after a few days, it was immediately the effect. I started to see, okay, like for example, bloating, even in the face, get less. You saw the effect, yes, in front of the mirror, that like your whole water retention system was like, seems to work better. And the second thing is that a massive impact on my performance per se. So cognitive, but also physical performance in sports. This was really something where I say, yeah, that's worth the money. And it's not that expensive. Yeah, so luckily electrolytes are not the most expensive thing you take. And everyone should do that. I would say everyone should take electrolytes for sure. Yeah.
Any particular mix you found that you can recommend? Obviously, not everyone's based in Germany, but it'd be good to have a benchmark.
Yeah, I just take one. This is like a low sodium. That's what I would recommend because like you take sodium all the time. Why should you even take more? For me, it was like a low sodium product. And this had like a really good effect. I think they had like electrolytes like that are leaving out the salt that you are eating all the time is like something that you would get all around the world for sure from the bigger
You just got to make
players.
sure you look for that, and obviously look for that, and the other things, make sure it's not flavored in any way, because that's usually all sorts of artificial, weird and wonderful things you don't want to have. So, next question. What is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? And this could be an investment of money, time, energy, etc.
I think one of the best investments I made was time and money, but this is something that really also touched me from a personal perspective, but also from a perspective of what we're doing with the company. So we started to support a project in Eastern Africa, which I visited last year, which is in Rwanda. And Rwanda had really, really, really sad and crazy history. They had like in the 90s, which is not that far away, 1990 and 1991, they had like something that is like a civil war going on that was actually driven by Europeans. So Europeans actually entered into the country and they started to manipulate the population a bit, and the whole genocide started there. And this was massive, like over 2 million people died in a really short time frame. And this is a country that is based on this impact of history, the bigger rate of the people, or nearly only female people survived. And this is why the country is female-driven country. Like women are working, women are doing the business, the government is female, like nearly everything is female. And this is something where I saw, okay, this was new to see that, but this was like such a great experience there. So seeing the people, seeing the children, see how this country is like growing again. This was like touching me emotionally, but also from the company perspective, where I see, okay, we are working here in really luxury situation, and we have a good standard here in Germany, where I say, okay, we can support that with really, even if you don't have that much money, it's not that expensive yet. So, and what I learned there, and what was like for me really something where I say, okay, everyone can do that. If you want to help a village grow there, or you want to, build a spring in a village, this is typically what the big A-tier celebrities are doing, and where they are like showing all over social media, etc. So building a spring in a village costs around 15 euros. So this is nothing. So for celebrities, this is like peanuts. So they are like showing that like they're like the big heroes, but actually everyone can do that. And for me, that is something that was showing me, okay, actually we could solve a problem with just a few euros, and we can help hundreds with one spring there just by 15 euros. And this is something where I said, okay, this was really good invest of time there. It was really a good invest of money, because for us, this is nothing. For a company in Germany, even for young companies like us, what is 15 euro? Nothing. So where I saw that we can help people that really need it with less money that you would think. And this was a learning that I would never had experienced if I was not putting the time and a bit money into the traveling there. So this was really good invested, I think. Yeah.
Very interesting. Penultimate question. What is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
So maybe that is something that I have from nutrition perspective because of my grandparents. So even if I love longevity, I also love like typical German, or actually it's more Austrian food. So like schnitzel, we know that's a typical German thing. And like once a week, typically I need that. So I don't know why, but this is something I need once a week. So once a week I go to the favorite restaurant and eat it there. So even if I know that this is for sure not the most healthiest thing you can eat, because it is fried and everything, like there's actually just bad things for the health, but it is something that I experienced when I was a child by my grandparents. And this was something that was typically food that we ate on a Sunday when I was at my grandparents. So it was more like a tradition, maybe a bit unusual and maybe strange, but I think I will do that for the rest of my life. So yeah.
Do you know because we talk about longevity, which in general I think is a bit of a misnomer. I mean, longevity is really about health span, not lifespan. So not in terms of lifespan, how long you're on the planet for, but health span, how long you're healthy for, what we touched on earlier. But there's a really interesting concept a really interesting term that a friend of mine coined, and it's joy span. Like how much actually you're enjoying your life, right? And that is a big part of it when you say schnitzel.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, from this perspective, it's healthy. Yeah, absolutely.
So last question, and I think your scholarship Obviously, because he's got such an interesting background with your grandparents doing the research. But who would be your perfect sidekick in your lab and your work? So this could be someone past or present. We're going to exclude your grandfather for now. It could be someone real or imagined.
Yes, I think right now the perfect sidekick from where we are right now is not per se a person, because we are quite solid in science, I have to say. I would not say that there's this blindfold or missing spot where I would say, yeah, this is the perfect match is in the science and the research topic. I would say the perfect match would be a person that is advocating for spreading the word for closing gender gap, especially our topic. Yeah, so that is not afraid of creating a voice. Because for me, sure, it's good, like also the whole social media thing and getting noticed and everything, it's good. But if there would be more people like that on the side, like also a partner or something where I see, okay, this is a person having a voice or creating a voice, this would be really, really, really important. I don't care about gender at all. For me, that's totally not relevant because everyone can advocate for everything, but it has to be a person that's really meaning it and really is able to transfer this feeling of, okay, we're changing something now and also educating into the world. That would be great, because for me, as much as I would love to do that all the time, but I still have like a company and the science and research to run, and every founder understands that you will have more far you get, the less time you will have for anything else. And this is something that we have to do by spreading the word and creating a voice. That's where I would say this would be a person that would be good. Yeah.
So, Ronny Szelinsky, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks a lot, Judith, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me on this transformative journey. Your presence in this community is truly valued. Now, you may not realize it, but your words hold immense power. They have the ability to reach others who may benefit greatly from the wisdom shared here. If you found value in what you heard, I kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to Biohacking Eve, leave a glowing review on your preferred podcast platform, and share Biohacking Eve with your friends and family. Your support helps spread the message of health optimization for women far and wide. Lastly, I want to express my gratitude to you for investing in yourself. By prioritizing your well-being, you serve as an inspiration to others. I'm eagerly looking forward to bringing you many more exciting episodes, and thank you for being a vital part of our community. Live long and prosper, my friends. The Biohacking Eve Health Optimization for Women podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be substituted for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have and should seek the assistance of the healthcare professionals for any such conditions. In addition, the information on this podcast does not constitute investment or financial advice. Last one.